Hello, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 5 of Life of a Travel Writer. This week we have Jen Ruiz, author of 12 Trips in 12 Months. Let's dive in.
So I was a full-time lawyer. When I turned 29, I realized that I had spent a lot of my time working and going to school and doing all the things that you're supposed to do, all the responsible things, but I hadn't really done anything fun or just for me in my 20s, right? I'd gone straight from college to law school, straight from law school to clerking, straight from clerking to working as an attorney. So I decided that year before my 30th birthday that I wanted to do something fun, something that would make me really remember that year fondly instead of being anxious about turning 30, if I was where I wanted to be, adulthood, all of those things. So I decided to take a 12 trips in 12 months challenge. I wasn't sure how I was going to do this yet, but I just knew that if I was busy planning one trip every single month while still working full time, I would definitely have my hands full and I wouldn't be able to worry about all those other things I just talked about, right? I would just be having fun for that last year of my 20s. So I ended up taking 20 trips to 41 cities across 11 countries, swinging off the edge of the world in Ecuador, going into a volcano in Iceland, volunteering with elephants in Thailand, all while being back in time for court at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. So at the end of that year, I ended up quitting my job because I had been teaching English online that year in part to fund my travels. And so I had a remote job, I had proof of concepts, and I published my first book, The Affordable Flight Guide, sharing all the flight deals that I made that I was able to find to get to all of these places and afford so much travel in such a short time. And that book did really well. It won a Reader's Favorite Award. And so I decided to invest in myself because I had that backup of teaching English online, that ability to work and earn remotely, which at the time, in 2018 still wasn't super popular. So with that, I decided to transition and do this full time now, travel blogging, content creation, travel writing. And it has really evolved over the years into now its own trademarked LLC.
Very nice. And then, okay, so let's go back to where was the spark of the idea for your first, because you've published before. The first three are guidebooks and they're self-published. Where was the spark of idea for that? Because you're doing so much, you do 20 trips in a year, but what part of that process were you like, "Oh, I could write a book about this and I can self-publish it myself?"
I always had the idea of writing a memoir about the experience, which is what just recently launched last year. But I think what's really important when you're a writer and you're somebody who is trying to reach an audience and sell books, because I think a lot of people first make the mistake of thinking their job as a writer is to write the book. Your job is to sell the book. If nobody knows this book exists, right? Your job as a writer is to market, to make people be interested in your books, to want to follow your writing portfolio. And that's why the most successful writers have, 20 plus books, right? They're constantly writing and constantly publishing new things. So I think the first mistake is in thinking that this book that I write has to be like my magnus opus, my masterpiece, everything kitchen sinking it in one place. That's why people don't write it until later in life. That's why they end up just holding back on publishing. They're worried it's not perfect, and then it never gets done. But I think the other mistake is writing the book that you want to write versus the book that people want to buy. And I think that we can see kind of a parallel with, I think of Pink and how when Pink first came out, the music artist, she was doing a different, like more hip hop. And then she turned more rock, right? And so whoever was managing her knew that her image, people want to buy these like hip hop singles, right? So we're going to put that out first. And then once you're big, Pink, you can do whatever it is you want to do, right? And I think it's kind of a similar thing for authors. You should be putting out a book that people want to buy, that they're excited for. So instead of saying, I want to write this book, even though there's no market for it, even though I don't see any other comp books, like I just have this in my mind, you're looking at it wrong. Look at it first from a business perspective and how can you build a fan base that's really excited for what you're putting out so that the more successful you get, the more freedom you have with what it is that you're covering and what it is that you put out. And you know it's going to a warm base of fans that have already fallen in love with the rest of your work. So for me, it was people constantly asking me, how am I getting these flight deals? So even though I knew I had these stories that I wanted to tell, and I knew I had this idea about transformation, the idea of a milestone birthday and aging and what women are supposed to be like and how much pressure we put on ourselves to have everything and by a certain timeline, these were all themes I really wanted to explore. But what people wanted to hear from me was, how did you get to New Zealand for $38? How did you get to Ecuador for $16? Because I had inadvertently been marketing that book throughout the whole challenge when I was sharing my flight deals with the audience. And so people were getting excited. They were actually seeing me book the deals. They saw the immediate proof. They saw me go to these places. And so I had, I didn't realize it, but I'd done a year of priming my audience to purchase this book on finding flight deals. So I think that's the second most important thing, is really write the book that people want to buy from you before you're trying to get people to buy the book that you want them to read.
Okay, so when you went into it, you didn't realize that you were going to self-publish a book. You knew that you wanted to do trips and that you started writing it on your own, and then you realized from the audience's feedback while they were reading your blog post that they were interested in the fact that you were able to get these flights.
Correct. And
Yes.
a book wasn't even necessarily, well, a book was on my mind. I knew a memoir, but at that time I was thinking of a memoir like everybody thinks of a book, right? Maybe
Mhm.
later in life as I get older, I'll write about my exploits, like not as a immediately tangible possible business thing I could launch. And so yes, my blog posts, I saw the trend in which blog posts are trending, which ones people get really excited about, what they want to hear more about. But in general, the questions I'm being asked on social. And so I was towards the end of that year when I was considering writing a book and leaving my job. I wanted proof of concept that I could sell something through Jen on a Jet Plane,
Mhm.
not just me being a teacher with this other third party corporation, right? That's again just me being an employee, but in a different way. I wanted to prove, can I make money as an entrepreneur? Which again I had done as a freelance travel writer before then, but it was still writing for this other bigger
Mhm.
known outlet, right? So can I, Jen, make money? And so that was my proof of concept. And so I started looking into how to self-publish. I was listening to podcasts. At the end of the day, after I came back from work, I got really well known, like familiar with Kindlepreneur, which is a great website that has so many great resources for anybody that wants to publish on Amazon. And so with all of this learning that I was doing online digitally, I thought, maybe self-publishing is a viable option. It's definitely quicker and it's a easy way for me to see, is this a proof of concept? Can I sell something from my own name? And since it wasn't the book that I was originally thinking of writing anyway, since it wasn't the memoir, I didn't feel like it was at risk. Because when you self-publish, it's it's possible. I just saw it happen for a romance author yesterday, but
Mhm.
it's highly unlikely that it'll get adapted and picked up in its self-published version and then republished by a traditional publisher. Doesn't really happen often, right? So because when you self-publish, it's found its space on the shelf. Unless it's wildly, wildly successful. I'm talking like a 50 Shades of Grey kind of thing where they're like, yes, this is horribly written, but everybody loves it, so we're going to buy it because we're going to follow the money, right? So unless, and at that point, you don't really, you're kind of already making a lot of money on the book
Mhm.
itself already. So, um, I think with self-publishing, it was an easy way for me to test the waters without it being a book that I was necessarily committed to getting a book deal for later on.
Okay, so you went into this not in the way of like a love of and passion for writing. Like I know I need to do this. Because like there's a lot of us who are like it hurts more not to write the book than it does to write the book. But you went into this as a strategic manner of you were like, I'm not sure what it is I'm going to be doing, but I know it's going to be involving travel and I know it's going to be involving writing, but you spent the year trying to figure out what it was that your proof of concept was, which is great, by the way, because a lot of people that's like a huge thing. I talk to a lot of people who want to write and be writers, and they don't know that. They don't know that you like a lot of people won't be published because they don't have big audiences, and like it's a long truck to be able to do that. So you went in with a very low risk plan, basically, of I'm going to spend this year traveling. I'm going to tell people about it. I'm going to see what kind of response I get from it. And then from there, figure out how to make my pathway. Now, then in terms of so you did it for one book and then you did it for two. Where was the transition where you finally decided, okay, this is it. I'm going to make the move from self-publish to traditional publish, and what did you have to do in order to bridge that gap?
It was the pandemic, but I will say that I didn't necessarily. So, yes, I felt like I wanted to write about my passion, but I felt like that was covered adequately with the freelance travel writing I was doing,
Okay.
right? Like, I felt like I could cover that in the articles I'm pitching because I have the rein and how I decide to write them. So, I didn't necessarily feel like it
Mm-hmm.
had to be covered in book length. And I knew I had an idea for a memoir later on, but I definitely did have my self-published books as a business and an idea
Mm-hmm.
of I want to make money. And I think a lot of authors, a lot of creatives in general prescribe to the starving artist
Mm-hmm.
mentality and how being broke somehow makes you a better artist or more noble in the pursuit of your craft. And that's garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Because you
Yeah.
can have, if you don't get seen, you could have the most amazing, valuable, impactful, Nobel Prize worthy work. But if nobody is talking about it, it's not going to have the impact that you want it to have on this world. And it's doing yourself and your message a disservice
Mm-hmm.
because you're not amplifying it to get to the people that it needs to. You have that idea in your mind and you have that inspiration and you have that passion, that divinely placed idea and gift that you're meant to create something for a reason. And if you're doing it and you're not giving it the full amplification that it deserves, you're just letting it die. You birthed the idea, but now it's dying on, the 2 million rankings of Amazon that nobody's ever seen. They have to click to like page 20 of the results to find it. And that's a disservice. It's a disservice to you. It makes you feel bad as a writer. It makes you discouraged. It makes you not want to write in the future. So I do think that we need to flip this mindset of I am more honorable because I did it poor to I deserve the financial success that comes with this. And I'm going to treat my writing like a business because that's how I am able to fully carry out this mission and this passion and not feel horribly depressed and dejected as a creative that hasn't been able to get off the ground or make a living with my creative pursuits, even though I feel deeply that I should.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think I really want everybody to step away from that and do think of it like a business. And so with that, it was 5 self-published books because I knew I have enough of a platform that I can market this. People are asking me for this. This is nonfiction. I had 3 on travel and then I pivoted 2 into digital, making money online.
Mm-hmm.
25 Ways to Work from Home was published in 2020, April 2020, and then From Blog to Business was published in September. In August of 2020, right before I published From Blog to Business, I had gone to the Writer's Digest conference.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the turning point for me. So at this point, it's the pandemic. All of my digital travel incomes have stopped. Nobody is traveling. So anything that I have spent the last 5 years building up has gone to zero.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there was, and I've always kept putting off again that book of, okay, one day I'll write it, one day I'll do it, even though I knew that's an idea and I have. And so a lot of books talk about this, The Artist Way, The Creative Act, all these
Mm-hmm.
different books mention this, right? Like when you have an idea and you don't act on it, it kind of eats you apart from the inside because you keep seeing other people achieve what you know that you're meant to be achieving, or you see other people. I just saw today, somebody was like, I didn't pitch this idea, and I just saw another magazine commission it for another art writer, and I feel so dumb. I should have pitched it. I didn't think it was good enough. And so you will like slowly eat yourself away if you're not actually bringing to fruition the creative ideas that you have inside of you. So at that time, I had been putting it off for years. I'm too busy. I'm going on trips. I'm all over the place. I don't have the time to sit down and write a book. And now at this point, like there are no more excuses. Any of my income streams are gone. I am just sitting at home. I have literally nowhere to go and
Yeah.
nothing to do. So that is the time, right? If you're going to be looking to potentially pursue a traditional book deal, that was it. I had no more excuses and that was the time. And it happens to people. You don't need a global shutdown. Sometimes it happens when people are laid off. Sometimes it happens if they have an injury and then they're sitting there recovering it. So sometimes the universe will nudge you in a way. And you don't need to have anything tragic. You could also just be,
Mm-hmm.
self-guided enough to sit down and be like, no, I'm going to pursue this.
Mm-hmm.
Now is the time. I would definitely recommend that way. It's easier. But so I attended the Writer's Digest conference again because I don't believe in subjecting yourself to years of torture as a writer. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't believe that pursuing your passion should be miserable. And I think as writers, they do that. Why? Because when you're trying to get a traditional book deal, you're cold pitching agents that know
Mm-hmm.
nothing about you. You don't even know if they're interested in you. Maybe they're interested in just people with certain platforms, maybe just people they know. But you're sitting here and you're spending all your time researching people that don't know you, sending your stuff to their bulk submission inbox so you
Mm-hmm.
could be one of hundreds that they're getting pitched from. And then If you hear back from them at all, it could be a curt rejection letter. And after years of this, you think, I suck, my writing sucks, nobody wants me, there's so many problems with the publishing industry, blah, 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 blah. When in reality, like everything in this world, you kind of have to go and get it. And you have to find the shortcuts to getting it. And always a shortcut, especially today where everything is digital, is in real life. And so even or even face to face, like we're doing right now, because I went to the Writers Digest conference when it was virtual, which saved me the money of having to pay to go in person. But I was able to have meetings face to face with literary agents that were interested in representing my genre, that had already looked over my book proposal. They had to be there. They were forced to be there for the hour I was there, right? So they may as well interact with me, give me some advice, give me actual feedback versus just glazing over my email, deleting it. Like at the very least, I was guaranteed to have an honest interaction with these 8 agents. That's so much more than anybody can say for any email inbox that they're just sending materials to. So that was an extra $500 investment for their pitch slam, and it was worth it. I got my agent from there.
Mhm.
She requested additional materials after seeing my query letter for nonfiction. You don't have to write the full manuscript, just the book
Mhm.
proposal. And I worked with a proposal coach to get the proposal perfected before I sent it to her a few months later. And that's when I was offered representation.
And for the coach that you worked before, did you paid out of pocket for that?
Correct.
Yes, you did. Okay, so you put the time and the investment on top of it. Because that's something that's really not talked about is a lot of, because writing is such a solitary thing that a lot of people don't, and a lot of introverts and everything are writers, and they don't go to where the people in the, like you need to be in the room where the people are who are going to, I need to know that you know what you're talking about, and I need to get, because you need a feedback, and a lot of people don't have that sounding board. So you were on a mission to get it done because you knew you wanted it. But do you think that your background as a lawyer changed your scope of frame? Because just a lot of writers in general don't have the same, not all of them, but most of them don't see it. You're right. They see it as being a starving artist. They think it's difficult because do a lot of people you end up hearing more failing stories than you do succeeding stories. And do you think because you were business first that you knew that this was going to be a way for you to complete what you wanted to complete?
And I don't even know if I would think of law as business because I
Yeah,
think
but
I still was so intimidated by like accounting, finances, like
mhm,
business. Whereas like laws, I'm okay, I'm pretty good on that. But like the business part of it still really scared me. Even during the pandemic, I signed up for like a Harvard online like business school class. And then
okay.
I was like, why did I do this? Like, why did I pay money for this? This is miserable. I don't enjoy this. Like, this is not my area of expertise. But I just wanted to show myself, like, okay, Jen, you have to have some basics in like accounting. Otherwise, you can't oversee the people that you're hiring to do it for you. Like, I did want to have some basic knowledge, but it's not my forte at all.
Mhm,
My forte is writing, and that's what law is. Law
mhm,
is all writing. It's all play on words. Actually, you
yes.
said this. That doesn't mean that. That means this. And so, as such, this is not binding. It's a game for people who like to play with words and have binding and like power plays. So if you ever
Mhm,
liked board games and you like Scrabble, like law is for you because you can just sit here and with all your words like decimate people. It feels really
mhm,
good for people who like to win things. And so I do think I had storytelling abilities naturally. I think I had a lot of confidence in presenting myself and not being taken for granted. Still to this day, I've had just recently I've had to turn down 2 opportunities that seemed good, but then when you look at the legal terms, really weren't, and people weren't willing to budge on them. So I
mhm,
do feel I have a lot of confidence in negotiating, standing up for myself, getting what I'm worth, and automatic credibility that comes with being an attorney. People assume I know how to write because I have the highest degree possible. So I didn't make it there, not being able to put together full sentences.
mhm,
People assume that I'm responsible and I can meet deadlines, that I'm fact checking, that I'm not plagiarizing. Like all of that helps me as a writer, definitely that level of credibility. But putting yourself out there, which again, I feel like I had experience with because I was a trial attorney. So I'm
mhm,
experienced with public speaking and I'm experienced with winning over a jury. I had a lot of training in that. So I feel like I can put myself out there, but it's still work and it's
mhm,
still nerve-wracking and it's so much harder when you are the person that's being judged. As a
mhm,
lawyer, you're judging somebody else's decision, so I'm just a proxy. I'm just here, like, presenting the information. This is nothing personal to me at all. Writing a memoir and reading the reviews of people reviewing not just the book, but my life and my life decisions and me as a human being, and then being like, 2 stars for Jen as a human. And I'm like, it is intense. So I would think, I think I would just say, I don't know that it's easy. And I don't know that there's any innate skill that's going to make you inherently able to do this. I do think it's a tough job to be a writer. But that's why I want writers to be paid, because I think you do a better job when you're well resourced and you're not stressed out and it's a gift for your writing, than when you're really stretched and already having to deal with everything else that comes with writing, the critique, the stress of getting everything out there, the promotion, feeling like you don't have a big enough platform. It's a lot of stress. So at the very least, you deserve to be paid well for all of this.
And when you, okay, so you meet your agent at the conference and then you hire a coach to help pre get everything ready to her. Now did you just work with the coach? How long did you work with the coach before you handed something over to your literary agent?
Worked with the coach before even going to the conference on the query letter.
Okay.
So I gone to the library, I had samples, I pulled query letters from online, but that wasn't the same as actually working with a coach who could say, these are the objections that you personally, Jen Ruiz, are going to get from agents. They're going
Okay.
to want to know why you're switching from self-published to traditionally published. Why now? What's different about this book? If you've had these wins, you've grown your platform in X amount of time, like you really need to highlight that. And so she really made it crafted for me. So we dealt with that beforehand because that's what we
Yeah.
were sending to agents before the pitch slam to see if they were interested in meeting with me. Then once obviously her work got me these meetings, it did really well. Multiple people requested more materials from me. So then I went back to her again and I said, let's work on the proposal now. I spent at least 4 figures, so definitely over $1,000 on coaching. I don't remember exactly how much. I don't know if it was 1,000 each time or like maybe like 1,500, like because the query letter was small in the book proposal, but I definitely spent 4 figures on coaching. And we worked on the proposal. And my instinct was they asked for this, so I have to drop everything and have this out to them like tomorrow. And she's like, nope, they are, you have one shot at this. They are going to conferences forever. So they're going to have
Mhm.
a lot of people that they're asking for materials from. They're not going to remember exactly when they asked you. And you can reference that. But I actually didn't, I think it was like in the summer. I'm sorry, I'm getting my dates a little bit messed up now. But sometime in the end of 2020, between
Mhm.
August and November 2020 was the conference. And that was around the time after when I started working with my coach. And it wasn't until June that I sent in my book proposal. So it was like 6 months later
Okay.
that I actually sent in my book proposal. And we were working on it for a while.
Mhm.
Because we just wanted to make sure it was perfect before I sent it in. And knowing that you don't want to send in a book proposal that isn't perfect, and now they're not going to give you another chance to read that proposal. Like they
Mhm.
have to be really excited about it.
Yeah.
So that was totally counterintuitive to me. Like, wait 6 months to follow up with somebody who requested additional materials. Are you crazy? And she's like, nope. Just tell them when you do send the email, just be like, hey, I met you back in November or August or
Mhm.
whatever the date was for the Writer's Digest conference. Here's materials you requested. Like that's it. And I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's worth it.
Yeah, that's like it's something that like a lot of people don't know is how slow and like pull like teeth pulling slow the publishing industry is. So and especially like when you're self-publishing everything, you want everything to turn over so quickly, and that's just like not the case. So it like sets your nervous system a little awry. But how did you find your coach?
I think through the Women in Publishing Summit,
Okay.
there's an annual digital Women in Publishing Summit, and I think she had done a session on her services and, book proposals and queries and things like that. Her name is Jennifer Wilkov
Okay.
from yourbookisyourhook.com.
Hmm.
She was good. She was
Yeah.
solid. And then I also worked, so we're talking about, as we're putting the investments together, I also then worked with a memoir coach as well, Marianne Roach.
Oh, yes, I
And I
know her.
invested
Yes.
in her course. Yeah. And
Oh, nice.
was excellent.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah. Okay, so then beforehand you work with two people, you work with Mary, you work with your coach, and then when you gave the book proposal to your literary agent, how did you have to go through another round of drafts, or did she then put it out for auction?
I think not really. I think maybe there were like one or two things, but she would have fixed it herself, not
Mhm.
necessarily like coming back to me for extensive edits, like anything that she would have done on her own end. Sometimes she just tweaks little things and then she went and shopped it out.
Okay. And how long? So did she talk to you beforehand about who she planned to shop it out to? And then how many said yes, how many said no, and like how long until you got a book deal?
She did, and we experienced a lot of resistance in selling a travel memoir in the middle of a travel pandemic when all travel was stopped and nobody knew when it was going to start up again. Like
Oh
this
God.
was height of like everything being really awful. So it was a little bit tough to place that memoir, I'm not going to lie. And it wasn't until uh the end of that year. So
Hmm.
we signed on with her and I think she made me an offer end of July and
Hmm.
around November, December is when we got the offer from Blackstone.
Okay. You signed on in July and that was 2021 or
2021.
2021. Okay, got you. Okay, so okay, that's less than, yeah, 6 months. Yeah. Okay, that's not bad. And then did it go to auction? Did you have multiple offers or did you only have one offer?
I think we had the ability to keep pursuing it, but I liked Blackstone and I liked
Okay.
what they were offering and we thought they were a good offer and I liked the my acquisitions editor. I really
Hmm.
liked him a lot. So we decided to move forward with them. And I'm glad I did. We moved forward with them again also for my upcoming memoir.
Yeah, I
My
was gonna
second.
ask, so you're doing a second one with the same acquisitions editor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So the company's Blackstone Publishing, and they were just really excellent. They've represented Whoopi Goldberg in her recent
Mhm.
memoir that released, Robert Downey Jr., a bunch of different celebrities. But I felt like they had the credibility of any Big Five publishing company and that they represent people in the same way. But I felt like they were invested in me, especially as a new writer, in a way that a Big Five company wouldn't be.
Hmm.
Uh, in that and I always expected at any point in time to be at the very bottom of the totem pole as a brand new writer in a space that isn't super like bustling right now. And so I just again realistically looking at this from the business point of view, people follow where the money is. That's how people
Hmm.
get book deals who aren't even interested in writing a book, and publishing companies approach them and they're like, "Would you like to write a book?" Because they're sure that book is going to sell because these people have such a big audience and they make so much money. So I just kind of realistically looked at things that way, and I thought Blackstone was a solid option. They offered me a good advance, and on top of that, too, they allowed me to read my audiobook, and they paid me to read my audiobook as well, which was separate from the advance. And I had friends that had been approached in many different ways, had people approach them to write like a for dummies guide or with a particular book in mind or things like that. And I had one friend in particular who was really upset because she wasn't even approached about the option of recording her own audiobook. They
Hmm.
just went ahead and recorded it without her and presented her two files and asked her to pick one.
Hmm.
And it was a book that was very personal to her and she really wanted to read. So it was not only assumed that I would be reading it, and I was like the first one presumed. I didn't have to audition to read my own book, which I heard other authors had to do as
Hmm.
well. And they paid me really well to read the book as well. Um, so I was very happy with them, and in general, I'm very happy with what they did for me. I think a lot of people put so much, again, because these authors are sitting there starving and they've been waiting for years to get this book published. And then so they're like, this is it. This is my golden ticket. This
Yeah.
publisher is going to make all of my dreams come true, and the money's going to come falling in, and they're going to set up my entire book tour and everything.
No.
No. So they will do that again if
Hmm.
you are already making them money. Because what sense would it make for them to invest in you if you're not already one of their top generating authors?
Hmm.
Like it can be at that point after you've published several books with them and you've become their favorite author and they have you at Comic-Con and you're in the New York Times bestseller list, right? Of course they're going to invest in you. Of course they're going to put more money in you because their marketing budget is only so big. But they're not going to risk that on somebody who hasn't proven yet. They've already paid you out in advance. So they're
Hmm.
not going to go above and beyond and be like, yeah, 100,000 K in marketing. Like, let's throw it in here. Like, it's not going to work that way. You are the marketer. So I was already really impressed with them that they set up various book signings across independent bookstores all
Oh,
over the
okay.
country. They set up at least two TV appearances. So they were really good.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because most people when they go to publish a book, they don't realize that the publishing house is not your marketer. You're gonna walk in and they don't even expect you to meet your advance because most first-time authors and most books in general, unless it's like 50 Shades of Grey or something like that, that's just random, or J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter, most books don't meet their advance, which is crazy that a lot of people don't know. And then, so when did you decide that you were going to do a second book? And when you approached them for the first book, did you already know you wanted to approach them with a second book?
Yeah, my second book isn't even published, and I already have the next book in mind.
Okay, so
And
you're on
so
three. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Good.
you, and it's unrelated, but I am always thinking about the next book. And again, this is
Hmm.
just coming back to my self-publishing days because from very early on, the statistic of like most six-figure
Hmm.
authors have 20 books or more.
Yes.
And so now with this next book, that puts me at seven. So
Hmm.
that means I still have 13 to go before we even get to, six figures of just royalty income. And that's where I'm
Hmm.
trying to get to. So you have to be prolific. I'm always thinking of the next book,
I
always.
love that. Yes. Yeah, a lot of people don't think that. It is. It's wild because throughout the years working in different industries and working with different people and artists and writers, and a lot of people don't see that it's a long-term life career. It is not a one and done. Like you're not, everyone doesn't end up like Harry Potter and 50 Shades of Grey. So I love that you came into it knowing that this was going to be a thing because a lot of people come into it and they don't realize how much they don't know until they start doing it. And then you're like, well, I've already made it this far. Like, I can't quit now, but which is nuts. And is there any advice that you have for someone who is just starting out?
Don't wait, right? And don't kitchen sink your books. If you are going to be self-publishing, I think limit them to the topic because especially in the nonfiction world, you want to get people a result. And when you put too much information in something, it overwhelms people. So
Hmm.
actually, you're better off breaking up your books into a related series because then your people find one book and then they're like, oh, that was really good. What else has this person written? And so the more books you have, the more your books will sell each other. And
Hmm.
hopefully you're making them interrelated, you're putting them into series, and you're really able to get your knowledge or your stories or whatever it is that you want to publish out there in a way that you're thinking of how can I build this into a business, a legacy that I'm leaving behind. The next thing I would say is freelance travel writing is a great way to
Hmm.
start making money, not just travel writing. I say travel, I default to travel writing, but
Yeah.
freelance writing in general, and especially if you're promoting your book, things like for me, a memoir, like first person narratives, like I was published in the Huffington Post
Hmm.
personal for the story, in so many ways before it was printed. Same thing with the points guide, like different angles of the story, like traveling alone for New Year's, stopping dating to travel full time, things like that were story angles. So how can
Hmm.
you get publicity by writing about what you're writing for other outlets?
Oh, that's
And
great. Yeah.
linking hopefully and getting that featured in other places. So little excerpts of your story or what it is that you're trying to share to get yourself publicity. And then the last thing is always be thinking about growing your list, your email list,
Hmm.
because those are going to be your warm leads that are going to be most important to sell to and generate pre-orders.
Yes, which is very important, the email list. And do you have, so as we're coming to the end now, I want to thank you very much for speaking with me. This has been great. One, are you going to be in Ireland for the travel blogging exchange?
Normally, I do love TBEX. My first
Mhm.
conference was in 2017. I had 70 flights last year with the book tour. I am taking a break this year. So
Very nice.
I'm not doing any of the conferences this year. I had to pass on a few of them, but I
Okay.
suspect that next year with book promotion, I will be all over the place. But I highly recommend TBEX. Love them, love the team, and they're incredible. And you will get press trips around Ireland with your ticket. So very exciting.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, because I'm going to my first one. I'm going to Ireland, so I'm very excited. But do you have a
Apply early for those trips.
Yes, yeah, I did. I did that and everything. Yeah. And do you have a female travel memoir that you would like to recommend to our listeners?
Does it have to be travel specifically?
No.
I guess I can. I have a lot of friends. Yes. I mean, I think like the females I read all the time are definitely more in the business mindset, like Jen Sincero, Denise
Mhm.
Duffield Thomas, things like that. But just in the storytelling, I would say definitely. not a female, but Don George is like my favorite travel
Yes.
storyteller. He's amazing.
Hmm.
And his writing always just makes me cry with like how beautiful life is through the simplest things. But women that have written travel memoirs that were published around the same time as me, Beth Santos wrote Wonder Women,
Hmm.
just recently. Lisa Niver
Hmm.
wrote Bravish. Um, Angie Orth wrote Flirting with Disaster. So these are all women that have recently launched travel memoirs. Nikki Vargas wrote Call You When I Land.
Yeah, Call Me When
Um,
You Land, yeah.
and so these are all some different travel memoirs from ladies in this travel space, travel content creators, travel writers, professional travel writers, that I think have done a really great job.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much. It was great talking to you. And I think we should do a part two for when your second book comes out.
Oh yes, count me
Yes.
in.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. Thank you for tuning in for another week of Life of a Travel Writer. I'm your host, Courtney Cardini. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye.